everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you the books that I believe should be A24 movies. So I've read a lot of horror books, horror adjacent books, and I've often thought, wow, this needs to be a movie. So I thought, why not create this video? So the first one I have is The Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robinson. I talk about this book all the time. It's got its own video, it's in a lot of my recommendations. I talk about it on Instagram and everything else. So everybody knows that I love this book. It's dark, it's creepy, it's got clowns. It's set in a carnival where they become killer were-clowns. So it's a creepy book, which would make a perfect creepy A24 movie that is centered around this carnival. I love this. It was great. And yeah, it should also be a A24 movie. The next one is This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer. So this story is about these 4 climbers who venture into the Kentucky wilderness, and they have to kind of survive because they get lost, and this place, it's based around this incident. I can't pronounce it. Diaclov Pass. It's something like that. I had no idea what this was when I read it, so I thought that this was such a chilling story that deserves to be a movie. It really felt like the wilderness was its own character. The descriptions and the shadowy scenes were just incredible. It's also very gory, so it would make such an incredible A24 movie with its one setting scene, the gore level in this, and also the overall story and plotline. Thought it was incredible, and it should be a movie on its own right. So sticking on that theme, the next book I think should be an A24 movie is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. So this one is again another survival based story, and I feel like that's really A24-ish, trying to survive on your own in one setting. This one scene, it's not one scene, but like this one setting throughout the entire movie really makes something seem more creepy. And this story also follows that premise similarly to This Wretched Valley. This is about a little girl who gets lost in the forest on her own, away from her family, and she has to survive and get out of this sticky situation that she's in. And she starts to see things and do things, and Tom Gordon is featured a lot in here, so it might appeal to people who like baseball. So in that sense, that's why I think it would be a great A24 movie. The next one on here is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. I read this in July last year and absolutely fell in love with it. It's a crime-based thriller that centers around this black sheriff who is trying to solve a crime which leads into further crimes, and he kind of uncovers this secret ring in his town. So without spoiling anything, I really do think that this has potential to be a great movie. It centers around certain different themes and was an incredible read. The fast-paced nature of this story and the secrets that we're uncovering really makes me think that this was set out to be a movie in the first place. It was such a great book to read, so yeah, I think it should be a movie. The next one isn't a horror movie, but would have horror adjacent themes, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.A. Schwab. I read this in 2020 and fell in love with this story. It's incredible. The writing style, the emotions that you feel when you read this. It follows Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with the devil to get away from her life, and the only outcome that she has to deal with is the fact that nobody remembers her. And so that premise alone screams it should be a movie. I think that it is becoming a movie, but I'm not sure who's making it or anything like that. I know she's writing the screenplay for it, which I'm so excited to watch. But when I was reading it, I did think it should be a movie. It should be an A24 movie, because I feel like they can make this dark and pull out the horror themes that we kind of see throughout this story, and just make it so magical. But I am excited to see this movie. Who does it? I don't care. I'm excited to see this come to life. But that was one of the books that did come up for me when I was reading this. The next one is The Law of the Skies. This was a surprising book for me. I found it on Scribd and decided to read it on my holiday to Norway, and wow, I fell in love with this book. It is dark, it's creepy, and it just screams A24. So we're centering around these 6-year-olds who go on a trip to the Canadian wilderness with their guidance counselors, their teachers, and things get really weird and creepy. So again, it's a survival based story, but we are centered around children this time, and one of them is a killer, and it's very dark. I don't see this ever happening to become a movie, because you're kind of forcing these children into acting out scenes, but I feel like it has all of the potential to be an incredible story, even if they change the age of the children. I mean, what more can I say without spoiling this book? It's dark, it is beyond twisted, and there is so many gory scenes, and it's really scary. Like, for me, I find children to be very creepy, so when there's stories based around children, they're the scariest books that I've read. So this is why I think The Law of the Skies should be a movie. Next up is probably one of my favourite books ever, and that's The Only Good Indians by Stephen Grimm Jones. This was the first book that I read by this author, and I instantly fell in love. He's an automatic buy now for me. This was incredible. It deserves its own movie. It deserves so many things. Like, I adore this book. So this centers around revenge, and it's like nature's revenge on humans. So essentially, these group of friends, these men, they kill an elk, and it comes back to hunt them. There is so much to untangle in this book that it would make an incredible movie. I can see this like playing out in my head. I can already see the movie play of this. Should I make this movie? Maybe I should make this movie. I feel like, yeah, people are missing out if they don't pick up on this. I really love this. It's very ominous. There's a scene in here that made me physically put my book down, and that doesn't happen often. This book made me feel so disgusted and horrified. I started crying and everything. So if a book can really make me that emotional, then it deserves to be a movie in itself. I don't know what else to say about this other than, if you haven't read it, what are you doing? Like, you need to read this book. It's incredible. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and I feel like I need to reread it this year. So yeah, read The Only Good Indians, and if anybody who works for A24, you need to pick this one up. This is probably the best one to do. Next up I have is The Year of the Witching. This is a coming of age story about a girl coming into womanhood and witches. So is there anything more we need to say? It's a feminist based story, and I feel like that might be something that A24 should pull on. They do a lot of movies that center around the female as the lead, and The Year of the Witching really does center around women, and it has that angry, like, you feel angry when you're reading this. At least that's why it's one of my favorite books. It made me emotive. We're following this girl who learns about her past whilst also coming to terms with being a woman and also a witch. I love this book. It deserves to be a movie. The next one on my list is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This, I don't really need to say much about it. Everybody is talking about this book. It's weird. We have a religious cat, an old man, and a young girl. So that in itself screams odd. And what's more odd than an A24 movie based around this house and this man with his child and his religious cat. So I'm not going to delve too deep into this book, but the reason I think that this should be a movie is because this book is genius in itself. It is mind twisting, it's creepy, it's dark, and it centers around a mental illness that I've pulled out of this book. And so I feel like this work of art should be translated into screen form, because honestly, it was a work of art. Catriona Ward is just a genius for writing this book. I actually considered DNFing this like about 30 pages in because of how weird it was. But I'm so glad I stuck it out and finished it, because wow, this changed the game in terms of psychological thriller. So good, and should definitely be a movie. Next up we have Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This again is another survival story. I'm starting to see a theme where I am enjoying a lot more survival stories, and I want to see more survival stories from books turned into movies. So this one is a winter-based survival, and this has a lot of underlying themes throughout, which is why I'm thinking it should be an A24 movie, because it's not just this survival-based story and it's not just slashers. It has themes of domestic violence, women empowerment, and the unknown threat from this unknown terror set in the Colorado mountains. So it has the isolated setting, the underlying themes, and the overall survival-based story. So I feel like everything combined would make this an incredible movie to watch, which is why I've decided to put it in this list. Next up we have We Spread. This book isn't a horror as such, but it does pull on your heartstrings, and that's why I think it should be an A24 movie, because they can really make this movie horror adjacent whilst also pulling on your heartstrings and making you all emotional. This book is centered around an old woman who we read about her slowly delving deeper into memory loss as she's obviously getting older in life, and it's kind of scary to read, and it's kind of a real life thing that people go through. So I think that you're mixing horror and thriller aspects with a real life event that people might kind of fall into when we get older, which makes this a very creepy and scary read, even though it's probably not supposed to be all that scary. I thought it was incredible. You really delve deep into her mind and the world around her, and I think that the mind twisting elements of this book would make an incredible A24 movie. And then lastly on this list is The Hunting of Alejandra by Fee Castro. This story is incredible. It's one of my favorite from 2023. I love this book. It has themes of womanhood, being a mum, living in a world where you don't feel like you belong. It also deals with generational trauma, and the reason I picked it to be an A24 movie is because of how I was comparing it to Hereditary, in the sense of it's got like generational trauma, it's cult-based stories, like kind of demonic in a sense, and this book had that similarity in it, but more focused on the woman experience and coming to terms with who she is and why this is happening to her. So I love this, and I really believe that it should be an A24 movie, because of those reasons. And of course, if any of these descriptions or reasonings have convinced you to pick them up, I would highly suggest reading these books as well. And hopefully you can see what I see when I read these books. So that is my list of books that I think should be A24 movies. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. What books do you think should be A24 movies, or just movies in general? I would love to know. So with that, I'm going to end this video and wish you all the best. So until next time, keep your pages turning and embrace the darkness. Bye!